USS Colorado BB-45 was the lead ship in the Colorado class and served in the U.S. Navy from 1923 to 1947. She was laid down on May 29, 1919 with the New York Shipbuilding Corporation and was launched about 2 years later on March 22, 1921, commissioning into the fleet on August 30, 1923. I figure if you watched the video I did on the Colorado class as a whole, you probably don't need any stats, and if you haven't, then feel free to go back and have a look at that video. I'll link it in the description below. After she was commissioned, she went out for her first sea trials and training under the command of Captain Reginald R. Belknap. On December 29th, Colorado departed New York, headed for Portsmouth, England, and later Cherbourg and Villefranche-sur-Mer in France, Naples, Italy, and Gibraltar, arriving back in New York on February 15, 1924. She headed to the West Coast after some repairs, reaching San Francisco on September 15th, where she joined the Pacific Battle Fleet. During the 1920s and 30s, the Colorados, like every other ship in the battle fleet, took part in various annual fleet problems in the Pacific and the Caribbean, along with several naval reviews and ceremonies. The ship visited Samoa, Australia, and New Zealand alongside several other U.S. battleships. On May 1, 1927, she ran aground off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, but was refloated the next day. She undertook an overhaul in 1928 and 29, where her 4 3-inch guns were replaced with 8 5-inch 25s. She assisted with relief efforts on the 10th and 11th of March 1933 in Long Beach, California, after an earthquake. In the summer of 1937, the Colorado was the training ship for the University of Washington and University of California, Berkeley NROTC students. During this, she was stationed in both Puget Sound and San Francisco Bay, respectively. Colorado was part of the search for Amelia Earhart later that year, rendezvousing with the Coast Guard cutter Itasca on July 7th. She participated in a line crossing ceremony on July 9th and returned the NROTC students to their schools on the West Coast. From the 27th of January 1941, Colorado was based in Pearl Harbor, undergoing intensive training exercises and taking part in several war games, until the 25th of July, when she departed for the U.S. West Coast for another overhaul, in which her 12 5-inch 51s were replaced with the same number of 5-inch 38s. This voyage proved fateful. On December 7, 1941, 6 Japanese flat tops launched their strike groups of over 150 aircraft. Just before 8 a.m., they arrived over the U.S. naval base at Oahu, Pearl Harbor. By the end of the day, every single American battleship in the harbor was either sunk or damaged. 2,403 U.S. personnel, including 68 civilians, were killed in the attack, 1,077 on the USS Arizona alone. Colorado's refit was complete on March 31, 1942, and it returned to a different world. She participated in extensive training maneuvers along the West Coast. On May 31st, she and her sister Marilyn protected San Francisco from Japanese attack, patrolling near the Golden Gate Bridge. She returned to Pearl Harbor to be fitted out for action. She patrolled near the Fiji Islands from November 1942 to September 1943 to prevent further Japanese expansion in the Pacific. On October 21, 1943, she sailed from Pearl Harbor to aid in the pre-invasion bombardment of Tarawa. She returned to port on the second anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. She was overhauled on the West Coast again, returning to action by 1944. On the 22nd of January, she sortied to the Marshall Islands to participate in the bombardments of Kwajalein and Eniwetok. Another overhaul followed at the end of February. She departed for the Mariana Islands on May 5th. She participated in further shore bombardment missions at Guam, Tinian, and Saipan. During the bombardments of Tinian on July 24, 1944, she was damaged by 22 shell hits from 150mm Japanese shore batteries. 43 men were killed in the salvo and another 198 were wounded. After repairs, she joined the rest of the U.S. fleet in the invasion of Leyte. After a week in the Gulf, she was struck by 2 kamikazes, killing 19 men and wounding another 72. Despite the moderate damage, she bombarded Mindoro on schedule. She returned to the Philippines and Luzon by New Year's Day 1945 to bombard locales on the Lingayen Gulf. She was hit by accidental gunfire, killing 18 and wounding 51. After repairs in Ulithi, she joined TF-54 at shelling Kerama-Rito on Okinawa. She remained off the coast of Okinawa until May 22nd. She returned to the island in August to sail for Japan for its occupation. Her final action of the war was on August 27th when she covered the airborne occupation of Atsagi Airfield. For her actions in World War II, she received 7 battle stars. She departed Tokyo Bay on September 20th, 1945 for San Francisco. She sailed for Seattle, Washington for Navy Day on October 27th. She, of course, did her part in Operation Magic Carpet, making 3 voyages across the Pacific to Pearl Harbor, bringing more than 6,000 soldiers home. Afterwards, she sailed for Bremerton, Washington to be deactivated. At one time, she was the most powerful battleship in the U.S. Navy, but her fighting days were behind her. She was dwarfed in size and firepower by the newer fast battleships of the Iowa class. She was placed in reserve on January 7, 1947. She was sold for scrap on July 23, 1959. However, not all remnants of the Bucking Bronco were lost. The ship's bell is on display at the University Memorial Center at the University of Colorado. A 5-inch 51 caliber gun was donated to the Puget Sound Maritime Historical Society in 1959 and is displayed at the Museum of History and Industry in Seattle. 6 more were put aboard the USS Olympia when she was made a museum in Philadelphia in 1957. Her teakwood deck was put to use as a wall at the Haggett Hall at the University of Washington, as well as in the wall at the Legends Room at the Washington Athletic Club. These boards were preserved by 2 members of the club who had served as officers on board the ship. On February 7, 2014, more decking from the ship was donated by Boeing to the USO Northwest SeaTac Center as entry flooring. Her helm is in the collection of the Colorado Springs Museum, donated in 1961 by Rear Admiral G.R. Luker and other officers. Luker had served aboard the ship himself. And that's all for the Colorado. Tune in for the next episode of Warships, where I'm going to cover the USS Maryland. Don't forget to check me out on all the various social media stuff that's somewhere on my channel and maybe in the video description, assuming I've remembered to put it there. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!